3, 2, 1.
Glowing Up Latina, Season 3, Episode 23.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Glowing Up Latina.
Hello.
I'm Kristina.
And I'm Amanda.
Today, actually, we are going to be talking about the Alabama Supreme Court decision. And as you guys know, last week we brought y'all the episode with Lore and her IVF journey. And next week, we will be bringing you part 2 of that episode, which we are very excited for. We hope that you loved it. She is a really sunny, bright, just lovely person all around. And we are so excited or so grateful that she reached out to us to share her story. But in the planning of her coming on the show, this decision happened. Like, we had been planning it for a while, right? Feels
Yeah.
like
I want to
maybe
say,
since January.
yeah, it was around then, she reached out to us and we were surprised that, someone wanted to share that she wanted to share her story and use our, this platform to do so. And while we're doing this planning, the decision comes out and it took us like by surprise. We did not see this coming. This was not intentional. Like the two just happened to happen at the same time. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And as I mentioned in last week's episode, we did discuss with Lore, like, did we want to talk about it with her on the show? Did we want to do something separately? Because we just felt that we couldn't do the IVF episodes and not also talk about this.
Yes.
So we're doing it in a separate episode, which I do feel like is better because now we can just kind of like run through everything and not, that episode would have been really long if we tried to do both.
One long ass episode.
Yeah. Short and succinct. I know despite like some of our like what are they called? Detours. We do try to bring out short and succinct episodes. We just have so much to say all the
Yes.
time. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into the decision, the episode, everything about this. Okay, so first I think it's important that we talk about what happened that led to the lawsuit. And in this case, there were 3 sets of parents, and the first set of parents had 2 embryos that they were storing in this storage facility. The second set of parents also had 2 embryos, and then another set of parents had 1 embryo. They were all storing in this. The court calls it a cryogenic nursery, and they use terms like cryogenic nursery and extrauterine children. And I could not find like any medical, like anything or science based thing that uses these terms. And everything from every news outlet that I read also said that like they could not find like a source like where these terms came from. Like they're not medical or science based.
Mm-mm.
So the defendants in this case were the Mobile Infirmary Medical Center and the Mobile Infirmary Association. So the Mobile Infirmary Medical Center is the hospital where the parents agreed to or had contracted, I think is the term they use, to store their frozen embryos. And the Mobile Infirmary Association is the association that owns and operates the hospital. Over a period of 3 years, each set of parents went to a Center for Reproductive Medicine operated fertility clinic to undergo IVF treatments. During this time, the doctors at the clinic were able to help the plaintiffs create embryos in vitro. And some of these embryos that were created led to live births for these couples. And as I mentioned, the plaintiffs had contracted to have their remaining embryos frozen in the same location as the local hospital, the Mobile Infirmary Medical Center, which is operated by the Mobile Infirmary Association. So in December of 2020, a patient at the local hospital managed to wander into the center's fertility clinic through an unsecured doorway. At this time, they entered the room where the embryos were stored. They grabbed for the storage container the embryos were kept in, were freezer burned, and dropped the embryos on the floor, destroying them. And they were freezer burned because like embryos aren't kept in like a freezer temperature like setting. Like
Right. Yeah, it's not like a freezer like you have in your own home. It's completely different.
Yeah, do you know what kind of container they're kept in? Because like, I would think they would be in something that's like locked.
So those freezers contain, so the embryos are stored in what's called a cryogenic Dewar container.
Okay.
See how the name keeps on coming up though?
Yeah, the cryogenic.
Cryogenic, yeah.
Instead of I can't say that middle word you said, but container, they said
Yeah,
nursery.
yeah. It's a, cryogenic Dewar container.
Interesting. And does it like, because I think what I want to make clear while we're doing this episode is that I do think the center should have been held responsible for something. Like this random
Absolutely.
patient was able to get into this room where I mean, it's sensitive material, sensitive property, in my opinion. And
Mhm.
then some random person was able to get in, put their hand in one of these containers. And then, yeah, of course they dropped them. I'm not saying the hospital shouldn't have been held responsible for nothing. I just don't this wasn't the best way, in my opinion, given the ramifications, given everything that came of it.
Right. This was taking place at the Mobile Infirmary Medical Center. So that floor itself is only to store. I guess there are a lot of questions. Is right. Is that floor only for storage, or are there already, or is it like split with another office or other with where patients are being seen? Where is security? Why? Also, the patient, if this isn't like a, if this floor is only for like fertility reasons, then what was the person like? Is this a person was this a patient who was there for fertility reasons, or
Who
was
would
this
know how
no how
important this
important
stuff
stuff
is in that
is?
room?
Yeah, there are a lot
Yeah.
of questions.
And you guys, I did research and I could not find answers to these questions because I mean, to me, there are a lot more questions than like this. I don't want to call it a fact pattern. That's what we use like when we're in school and at work and stuff. But in this situation, there are a lot more questions, but I don't know. I couldn't find an answer to any of them.
Run the cameras.
Right. Yeah. Like, where
Run the
are the
cameras.
cameras? That's a
Run the
good
cameras.
point. This is a hospital. You're telling me there are no cameras? Like,
Oh, don't get me started because I know the
uh,
cameras.
okay. So after the patient had dropped them on the floor and destroyed them, two lawsuits were brought against the center and the association. One lawsuit was brought jointly by couples one and couple two. So between them, they had four embryos, those two couples.
Mm,
Couple three, the set with one embryo, they brought a separate lawsuit and all asserted claims under Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act. And they wanted damages for mental anguish and emotional distress. In the lower court, the center and the association saw a dismissal of plaintiff's claim. The lower courts found that the cryopreserved in vitro embryos do not fit within the definition of a person or child, and their loss could not give rise to a wrongful death claim. Both set of plaintiffs appealed, which is how they ended up at the Alabama Supreme Court.
mhm,
Okay, so that brings us to the Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act, which is from 1872. Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act allows parents of a deceased child to bring a claim seeking punitive damages, which are meant to penalize the person being sued when the death of a minor child is caused by the wrongful act,
mm,
omission, or negligence of any person. Now, the thing that this act doesn't do, the thing that this law does not do, which a lot of laws do not, it doesn't define some of like the important words in it, which we saw with like cases based around the Second Amendment. They're like,
mhm,
well, what is the right to bear arms? And what
mhm.
is a rel I don't want to have a list. What is a well-regulated militia? There we go. Um, so the question here is kind of what is a definition of a minor child or of a child? And
Mhm.
then the question for this court was, does the wrongful death of a minor act contain an unwritten exception or an exclusion for quote unquote extrauterine children?
Mhm.
And spoiler alert, the court found the Wrongful Death of a Minor Act applies on its face to all unborn children without limitation. Unborn children are children under the act without exception to their developmental state, physical location, or any other ancillary characteristics. Now we're going to go in a little bit to what was in the actual decision. So I think it's important to understand that this ruling is narrow. It applies to these three couples in this case whose embryos were destroyed. But because the court rules that the Wrongful Death of a Minor Act includes quote unquote extrauterine children,
Mm-hmm.
it sets a precedent for anyone undergoing IVF, anyone who works in the fertility industry, because the Alabama Supreme Court says that embryos are children, which is really like what the issue is. This ruling, it can be narrow to these three sets of parents, but because the court declares that embryos are children, it creates larger ramifications, not just for Alabama, but for the US as a whole.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as I mentioned, the act does not define either child or minor child. The defendants argue that the act contains an unwritten exception because they say an unborn child does not qualify as a child or a person if that child is not contained within a biological womb. And as we discussed in Lore's episode last week, part of IVF is they retrieve eggs from the ovaries and they retrieve sperm from the testes. Is that where it comes?
Yeah.
That where sperm
Yeah.
comes
I
from?
mean, that's the only way we can get sperm, and that's from a male, unless they got testes. So yeah.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Like, right? That's the medical word for balls, is testes.
Yes. Yeah, but then hold on. Now I'm like, yeah, let's just say this. Yes, testes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So they have to get sperm and then they combine the egg and the sperm outside of the womb in a
Mm-hmm.
test tube. I'm not let it sit is not the correct term, but like they like it
They allow
I
for it
don't
to
know. There we
fertilize.
go.
Yeah.
Thank you. For like 4 to 5 days. And then they are either implanted or frozen.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is done outside of any female anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is done outside of it. And the plaintiffs argue that the proposed exception would introduce a disconnect within Alabama law. They argue, for example, the exception would deprive parents of any civil remedy against someone who kills their unborn child in a partial birth posture. The defendant made their argument, the plaintiff made their argument. So now the courts say that a 2011 Alabama Supreme Court decision held that an unborn child qualifies as a minor child under the act, regardless of that child's viability or development. This conclusion was reaffirmed in a 2012 Supreme Court decision. They also look to the ordinary meaning of child, which includes children who have not yet been born. And they cited, and I looked at all these definitions, and it does. The Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the Oxford English Dictionary, and Webster's Third New International Dictionary, and that the defendants have given them no reason to doubt that the same was not true in 1872. And the court also uses Dobbs versus Jackson's Woman Health, stating that these views are in keeping with the Supreme Court's recent decision that even as far back as the 18th century, the unborn were widely recognized as living persons with rights and interests. So courts interpreting statutes are required to give words their natural, ordinary, common, and understood meaning unless there's some indication of otherwise. So basically what they're saying is that the dictionary says that a child or an unborn child is included in the definition of child, and the defendants in this case, the center and the association, have given them no reason to think otherwise or believe otherwise or like any indication that an unborn child is not supposed to be included in the definition of a child. But they say even if the word child was ambiguous, the Alabama Constitution would require courts to resolve the ambiguity in favor of protecting unborn life because in 2018, Alabama voters voted to amend the state's constitution to add what has become known as the Sanctity of Unborn Life Amendment, which says this state acknowledges, declares, and affirms that it is the public policy of this state to recognize and support the sanctity of unborn life and the rights of unborn children, including the right to life. So That's how we got to this decision, or that's
Mhm.
how they came to their conclusion that, embryos are children, which, as we saw, did have immediate ramifications. I read 3 clinics in Alabama closed after
Mm.
this decision came down. I also read there are only 8 fertility clinics in the state of Alabama.
Oh my god.
It kept saying 3 of the 8 fertility clinics have closed.
Oh my god.
And Alabama's a pretty big state. I mean, it's not like a small state.
8? Only 8 in that state?
Mm-hmm.
And if and just hearing, Laura's story last week, and can you imagine how many other families out there in that state trying to have kids and only 8 are available?
Well, I mean, I meant to ask her when we were talking to her because she said she had to drive 45 minutes for her clinic.
Right.
So,
So then sorry, go ahead.
well, it's just because, like, Texas is a big state. So then it
Right.
makes me wonder, like, how many are in Texas and how many are
Exactly.
in, like, each state in general.
It begs the question, how many fertility clinics are out there per state?
It's just, I don't know. This whole thing is really, like, sad and interesting because it's just people who are already like going through infertility are and struggling like mentally, physically, emotionally,
Mhm.
and then to have something like this happen because we saw that with the clinics closing so immediately,
Right.
people were in the middle of their IVF cycles. People were scheduled for transfers that didn't get them done. I think it was what? Was it like a week and a half, 2 weeks in between the decision and
And
when the new law?
yeah, something like that.
And as we heard last week in Lore's episode, like timing is crucial. Timing is important in
That
IVF.
that science is to a T. So yeah, if these women are out here, families out here, they're missing their window to one, like, make sure they're getting approved for injections, their trigger injections, sonograms, their transfers, their embryo transfers. Um, let's say an embryo transfer was successful, they need to come back and make sure that their blood work is that shows that they have a, positive pregnancy. All of these things are taken into account, and this was all on hold for these families.
That's the
Mhm.
other thing is like these clinics, they stopped because this Supreme Court decision threw into question who could be held responsible
Right,
for the destruction of embryos that are now considered children.
right. The wrongful death,
Um,
right? The wrongful death of an unborn child. So
mhm.
now you're telling, right, fertility clinics are being told, or are now, they hear the decision because the decision says embryos are children. So right, so it's like a light bulb goes off, and it's just like, okay, so now I'm storing children, quote unquote. What's going to happen if, you know,
They're storing children in a freezer
freezer,
also, which isn't, recommended for actual children.
right? Um, you know, human error, I guess. What happens if something happens, a mistake happens, an accident happens, and I'm gonna be held responsible because I'm responsible for unwrongful death of a child, of a minor.
Yes, and I'm glad you said that because so it brings me to my next point is the embryos are microscopic. They're smaller than a grain of sand. And my understanding is that when people agree to participate in IVF, they sign several contracts, some of which state that like the destruction of embryos can occur at these stages. And I was wondering though if they have anything about, I mean, I guess not. Because I was wondering if they had anything about liability in the contracts. I mean, maybe they'll add it now because since this couple like sued, I was
Mhm.
wondering if they had anything like they couldn't be held liable. But this is, I mean, this is a different situation because like we said, the person got into an unsecured like portion. It's
Mhm.
that's very different than like a human error or like an embryo getting stuck like on a petri dish or like on the little suction tubes that they use. Like that's
Mhm.
very different. So basically, doctors were trying to figure out how to help people have kids without risking legal action from unavoidable occurrences. Providers were concerned that if someone accidentally destroyed an embryo, that the provider or the embryologist would be on the hook for criminal liability. And I feel like I've said it a bunch at this point, but so embryo freezing happens on day 4 or 5, depending on what your clinic suggests. And at this point, the fertilized egg has multiplied and formed multiple cells.
Mhm.
So it is a potential for life, but it is not a life. So it begs Amanda's question, if the embryo is a child, then can it be frozen? Because that's the whole point, is like you're trying to end up with as many embryos as possible
Mhm.
so that you have the best shot at creating the family that you
Right.
want. But then like you don't want to implant all the embryos at one time, because if you want to have multiple children, like there's no there's no guarantee that multiple embryos will take. And then also, like, who wants to give birth to like 3 or 4 kids at one time?
Yeah, there's also the chance, right? Yeah, I mean, it's I know we say it's all to a science, but yeah, but if you put multiple like embryos in there, you can have multiple
That's also
you can
just
have
science, though.
you can have
Like,
right,
yeah.
you can have multiple children, multiple births. Like just one also, just putting one embryo in, that can split and you can have twins.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Could you imagine like multiple embryo splitting? See, that's a
That's
lot.
yes, coming out like Octomom. Come
So, like we were saying, though, sometimes embryos are destroyed in the process of IVF, and the court says that these embryos can be the subject of wrongful death lawsuits. So, a couple of ways that embryos are destroyed in the process of IVF are a fertilized egg can just naturally stop developing. Like it's going fine day 2, 3, day 4 for whatever reason. It just doesn't continue like it was supposed to.
And I just want to
And
say that is possible. That is possible. A fertilized egg can naturally stop developing. So that's called an anembryonic pregnancy. So that's when what happens is with a healthy pregnancy, an egg fertilized by sperm develops into the earliest form of an unborn baby called an embryo, right? We're discussing now. But with an anembryonic pregnancy, an embryo never forms or it stops forming and it is reabsorbed by the body.
oh, but see, that's the question though, is I mean, what do you do at that point? Like, it's nobody's fault. This
Fault.
fertilized egg stopped developing. Just like if it was happening inside of like a person's uterus, it would not be their fault that it stopped developing. They
Yeah,
didn't do anything to make that happen.
because then the body does its own thing and it traps it back in. It just gets reabsorbed into the body.
The body's pretty freaky. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I saw a video of how like let's say like the sperm entering the fallopian tubes,
hmm
the what your white what your white blood cell counts do, like what your because your white blood cells attack any foreign bodies, right?
hmm
And you see how these white blood cells come out and they engulf the sperm, like attacking it from all different ways, from entering, from going through the like successfully going through the fallopian tubes. It was the
So
craziest thing.
your body tries to keep you from getting
Oh
pregnant?
yeah, because it's like this is a foreign body. We don't know what this is, and it's like engulfing and taking it. It is crazy.
I did not know that. That isn't
Damn, and
okay,
I've
because I have like been doing more research on like fertility and like, like getting pregnant, and like the chances of women getting pregnant each month are just so slim to begin with. And then to learn that your body is also actively trying to keep you from not getting pregnant.
so you know that episode of Friends when Monica and Chandler are trying to have a baby, and they get the call from the doctor, and Chandler goes, "Yeah, so my swimmers can get off their Barker loungers, and your body's always attacking the ones that can try to get through." That is what that's what I'm talking about. That's the white blood cells attacking the sperm.
That is insane. Okay, because now that you tell me that, I think about how everybody's like, oh, it's so natural. Like, it's the most natural thing a woman can do. And it's like, is it? Because it kind of sounds like my body doesn't want me to do it.
Mm, there you go. Hmm.
Um, but the detours, guys. The detours
Sorry,
are.
sorry.
I mean, there has to be some levity in this episode because it is very dark and it is very serious. And, we're not trying to make light of it. It's just
Mm-mm.
the world is a dumpster fire and I just can't take it anymore.
I'm trying to keep up. It's just like,
Um, but other ways that embryos can be destroyed within the process of IVF are when embryos are thawed for transfer, there's a 1 to 2% chance that an embryo doesn't survive thawing. And again, something that would be nobody's fault. It can also, as Amanda mentioned, take multiple embryos to get to a single live birth. IVF is not guaranteed. So, what would be the consequence for someone whose transfer doesn't take, who they don't implant? Like, have they then destroyed a life because their body didn't do the implantation the way that it's supposed to?
and then without again thinking of the risks, the health risks that the person is going to go through, because now they feel like they're left with no other option but to put in all of their embryos in at one time. Yeah.
I was listening to a couple of podcast episodes on like the science of IVF and like the procedures of IVF, and it's really apparently recommended that your body only go through like an IVF cycle one time. Like it's not good for your body to go through it 3, 4, 5 times. Like it can there's like a something that can happen to your ovaries, like they get too stimulated.
It's called OHSS, I believe.
Yes,
Yes, it's
but I can't remember what it stands.
over hyper stimulated syndrome,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Over hyper stimulated syndrome. Yes, OHSS. Yes.
So, like, I think that's the thing that I can't get over is that the people who are going through IVF, like, they're all, to me, already like putting all their eggs in one basket. Because what I mentioned last episode, that like when they talked about it with their doctor, they were like, okay, this is it. Like, this is our last chance, like, way to kind of conceive where she can carry. And it's just, it makes it so much more stressful. It makes it that much more like where it takes a mental and emotional toll on you, like,
Right.
and not even including the physical toll that's already being taken on your body. It's just, I don't like, where was the thought? Where was the logic? Where was
Mm-hmm.
the use of a brain during
Mm-hmm.
any of this?
None of it.
Um, so also embryos can be destroyed during the process of genetic testing that couples or people doing IVF consent to during the process. And we heard Lore talk about last week the mosaic testing they did
Mm-hmm.
on her embryos. And sometimes it just happens. And that's a thing that people elect to do.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is you can either do it or not do it, but I think a lot of people, it seems like, do it because you've already gotten this far in the process. And like Lore mentioned, she wanted to make sure that the embryos that she implanted were going to be safe for her
Yeah, the
to carry.
viability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and here, the plaintiffs did elect, they signed a contract to the destruction of their embryos if they were not used within 5 years or for donation for abnormal embryos for research. So, that then begs the question, would that be allowed under this Supreme Court decision? Because they're saying that they're going to destroy the embryos, which are children.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the process of research, they will also be destroyed. So would that be allowed? Would that be killing? Are they then killing their
Yeah.
own children? So that brings us to the next part of the Alabama decision, which says that the ethics of quote unquote extrauterine children have been called into question. And there was also a constitutional question, like with the 14th Amendment and the Equal Protection Clause, but the court didn't need to resolve it at this particular time because the issues that were brought before them were resolved under statutory law, the Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act. But what this indicates to us is that the court thinks the Alabama Constitution may prevent IVF. And even if the Alabama legislature tried to pass laws that would permit IVF, so exclude the destruction of embryos from the wrongful death statutes or anything related to that, the Supreme Court of Alabama, could strike the amendment down as inconsistent with the Alabama Constitution because of that amendment, the sanctity for unborn life. Okay, so I want to read you guys some quotes from the decision the Chief Justice wrote. He wrote a concurrence specially. So, he wrote the majority opinion, and then there were a bunch of concurrences. There was one dissent, and the Chief Justice wrote a concurring opinion specially. And he said that a constitutional statement of public policy, like the 2018 amendment, limits the legislator's power to determine public policy with regard to unborn life. Accordingly, any legislative or executive act that violates the sanctity of unborn life is potentially subject to a constitutional change under the state's constitution, which goes back to what I was just saying, that even if the legislator made a law saying that IVF was permitted or excluded from wrongful death statutes, it could still be struck down as inconsistent with the constitution of the state. The Chief Justice goes on to say that when the people of Alabama adopted Section 36.06, the 2018 Sanctity of Life Amendment, they did not use the term inviolability with its secular connotations, but rather they chose the term sanctity with all of its connotations, including holiness of life and character, godliness, the quality or state of being holy or sacred, inviolability, sacred objects, obligations, or rights from the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. So the Supreme Court of Alabama is saying that Alabama adopted a particular theological view and imported it into the state's government. And so now everyone is required to live under it. And this is from the Supreme Court decision. It's a Bible verse that was quoted in the Chief Justice's specially concurring opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So the Supreme Court of Alabama is saying the people of Alabama adopted a particular theological view. In that case, this is Christianity, and imported it into the state government. And so now everyone is required to live under it. And this is an actual quote from the Supreme Court decision that quotes scripture. And okay, so it says, man's creation in God's image is the basis of the general prohibition on the intentional taking of human life. See Genesis chapter 9, verse 6. Genesis chapter 9, verse 6 from the Bible that he quotes says, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man. And he goes on to say that the doctrine of the sanctity of life is rooted in the Sixth Amendment, thou shalt not murder, and that the theological base
Go
view
back.
adopted by the people.
You said amendment. You didn't say commandment. Yeah. Because I was like, wow, we got that. We got that. The Sixth Amendment says that? Really? Is that
No,
where that
so
came from?
sorry,
Yeah,
guys.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
God. The sixth commandment is you shall not murder, thou shalt not murder. um Goodness. He goes on to say that the theological base view adopted by the people of Alabama encompasses the following: God made every person in his image. Each person, therefore, has a value that far exceeds the ability of human beings to calculate, and human life cannot be wrongfully destroyed without incurring the wrath of a holy God who views the destruction of his image as an affront to himself.
I think I can say, and we can both say, we are, I would say, like, we are women of faith, right? We right? We hold that to, what I say,
Mm-hmm.
can I say high standard? I don't know, or
Yeah.
standard, to a standard,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right?
No, I say high. I'll tell
I
you
can,
high standard because the last year and a half, I've learned that my
right.
faith is more important to me than I originally realized.
Same here. A lot of revelations just
Mm-hmm.
came out, and right. So, however, in this instinct, like, this here, church and separation of church and state went out the window. And I I firmly believe that those two should not be intertwined when it comes to any form of legal action, any legal decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still feel like it becomes biased.
Also, not everybody is a Christian. And
Thank you.
so
I'm
it's
glad you
just
point that
like,
out. because what I was gonna say, like, what we're saying is that you're holding faith and you're putting faith into this now, right? Religion into
Mhm.
this. Would you say the same if someone brought up the Torah? Would you say the same thing if someone brought up the Quran and found a phrase from the Quran, found a phrase from the Torah, and applied it to a legal decision? Or are you only going to just use Christianity for this?
But here's my thing is that, like, I don't shy away from my faith. I don't downplay it just because, somebody I know may not believe. My friends all know that I believe in God, that I
Mhm.
hold my faith to be like a cornerstone of my like moral compass, my being or whatever. But I don't push that on them. I
Absolutely
don't push
not.
it on anybody ever. And I've had religious discussions with my friends who believe and who don't believe. Jeremy does not believe in God. And it has never been my prerogative to try to get him to believe or to
Mhm.
try to get him to, adopt my point of view on things. It's it's none of my business. We've had the discussion of like, I want my kids to go to Catholicism. I want them to complete their sacraments.
Right.
I want us to go to church. It's I cannot say this strongly enough. It is none of my business whether the people in my life like believe in God or not. The same way that people and I like kind of pride myself on not being like pushy with my religion, I expect the same from people in my life who don't believe to
Mhm.
not push that on me.
Mhm.
And it's just being respectful of people's beliefs.
Mhm.
Restricting the access to reproductive health care based on one person's religious view. And I know that he's saying that, like, the people of Alabama adopted this view. And that's true. And I can see the merit in an argument like that. However, my big, big, big however, not everybody in that state is a Christian. Not everybody in that state believes in God. So not everybody in that state should have to live under like a Christian state of law.
There you go. Thank you. Yes.
And the rest of the US for that matter. Like,
Right, right.
nobody should have to live under
Right.
that. Like
Right.
it's very frustrating because I feel like it doesn't help religion at all that people constantly like pervert religion to
Yes.
impose their beliefs on other people.
Mhm.
And I don't know. It's just I could talk about this for a while, so we're gonna move on because it really makes me angry.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, one of the other things with this decision that I really did want to point out is that there are like chances of it spreading beyond Alabama. It can be used as a persuasive authority in other states to be like, well, look, like this state has already said that embryos are children. So this is why also our state should say that embryos are children. And we could also use the wrongful death of a minor act or a wrongful death statute. It's like a playbook, like a yeah, kind of like a playbook,
Playbook.
like an
Yeah.
instruction on like,
Yeah.
okay, you want this to be the finding in your state, like this is how you would do it.
Yeah.
And we saw specifically in Texas a similar thing tried before. So in May 2023, a man in Galveston, Texas sued 3 women for $1 million each after they helped his estranged ex-wife get an abortion via pills in July 2022. He alleged that the termination of the pregnancy qualified as a wrongful death under state law, and he saved text messages between his ex-wife and her friends as proof. And so this is right after Dobbs. All of this happens the summer after the summer that the Dobbs decision came down.
Mm-hmm.
And the man asserted that under Texas's wrongful death law, the rights of a fetus are equivalent to those of an adult. This man learned that the abortion was going to take place after reading his then wife's text messages. He found the abortion pills in her purse, put them back, and waited to confront her. It was during that period that his then wife took the pills. Now, 2 of the 3 plaintiffs, because all the plaintiffs in his suit are the friends. He's not suing his
His what
ex-wife at
ex-wife.
all.
Right.
Yeah. So 2 of the 3 friends countersued the man and stated that he wasn't interested in stopping her from terminating a possible pregnancy. Instead, he wanted to obtain evidence he could use against her if she refused to stay under his control, which is precisely what he tried to do. And This is still ongoing. The trial is currently scheduled for May 2024, so May of this year.
Oh, dang.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? And I've heard like really nothing about this.
You don't know.
I found it during my research for this episode.
But this, yeah, while you were telling this, like he found it. Like he found the pills. You found the
Mhm.
pills, and if you're so against it, you're so against your wife having an abortion, why didn't you confront her? Why
But
didn't
that's
you
just what they
say
said in the suit that her three friends, they were like, he could have thrown the pills away. He
could
could have
have?
confronted her then.
Yeah.
Like, no, he put them back. He was not interested in stopping her from having an
So
abortion.
so are you a an accomplice to the abortion?
There was some other stuff that I can kind of get into really quickly. She filed for divorce. They were still kind of living together, still were living together, which is how he found the pills. And then she, took the pills, had her abortion. And then afterwards, when he confronted her in text messages to her friends, she told them that he was telling her that unless she gave him her mind, body, and soul for the duration of their divorce, he was going to turn her into the cops, and that he planned to drag out the divorce as long as possible. So it's just a control tactic. Like it's just it everything is linked in our show notes, you guys. Anything that you
Mm-hmm.
want to
Yeah.
read, it's all there for you. It's like this is the crap that you set the stage for when you try to control
Mm-hmm.
whether a woman chooses to carry a pregnancy to term or not, or whether a person tries to carry a pregnancy to term or not. There are many reasons people do not want to be pregnant, either by their current partner or
Right.
at all.
Right.
And this couple already had children together. So it's
Hmm.
not like this was like their first kid and she was like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do this." They had kids, they were divorcing. She was like, "Not another one."
Yeah. With this person who's controlling me.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just really annoying. It's a lot to take in. It's a
Yeah.
lot to process. It's a lot to try to wrap your head around, especially for a state that you don't live in. I can understand
Right.
how you could see this and be like, "What does it matter to me?" But
It
it
doesn't.
does.
It does. It does.
Yeah. So, and then I guess to kind of like I forgot to mention that they did pass that law in Alabama. The governor signed into law a law that shields IVF providers from potential legal liability. The bill protects providers from lawsuits and criminal prosecution for the damage or death of an embryo during IVF services. The bill says no action, suit, or criminal prosecution for the damage to or death of an embryo shall be brought or maintained against any individual or entity when providing or receiving services related to in vitro fertilization. However, the legislation does not address the issue of embryos being considered children, which is like the main thing we would need it to deal with. So that is the Alabama decision, you guys. I tried my best to make it succinct. I realized that I don't know if I did that. But again, there was just no way that we could do Lore's episodes without talking about this.
Mhm.
I hope that y'all found it helpful. I hope that you learned some new information. The decision in full will be linked in our show notes if you happen to want to read it. And just like I said with the Dobbs decision, this one is written very plainly. I mean, there are some legal terms in it, but nothing that you can't Google.
Mhm.
Um, I do recommend that everybody read the decision. And also, if you hear of Supreme Court cases that you're interested in, the decisions are all online. You can also read them. And I do recommend that you go. And if there was something that you were interested in from before, like if you wanted to read the Dobbs decision, it's also online.
As we mentioned before, it is important to know this, to know what's going on about this decision. And although it may not be occurring in your home state, there is always the potential of using this decision onto other cases. It affects families and women, and basically telling them what to do with their bodies. I think I think that's the key to take away from this as well.
I don't really have a good transition, but I guess to take us into something a little lighter before we leave,
Hmm.
I watched the J Lo movie.
You watched it?
I did.
Oh my god.
It was a lot.
Maybe I'll have it on in the background while I'm cooking today, meal prepping. I'll figure that out.
I just there was one song, I'll say, there's one song in there that is really cute. And I don't know if
Oh,
it's because it's like
yeah, okay.
it's kind of like her 90s, like when she was
Oh,
coming up again, like vibe.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Like on the on the sixth album, like that album on the sixth, when
Yeah.
if you had my love, that song, like
Um, it has a sample of do you remember it's not from like even in the Sean Paul song it was a sample, but I can't think of like the original, but that I'm so in love. I can't, my voice is gone.
I'm so in love with you,
hmm
boy. Okay.
Yes, that exactly. Um, from a Sean, 'cause I was like, I've heard this before. Where have I heard it? From a Sean Paul song. That's where I heard it. Let me find it really quickly. Because when I heard it, I hadn't heard it in forever. And then when I listened to it, I was like, wow, what a throwback. That brings me back. But um, it was like an hour and a half of time that I spent that
Hmm.
I now have to like reconcile that I spent an hour of time watching
Okay,
that.
I'll see.
An
That's what
hour
I'm
and a half
saying.
time.
I'll do it. I'll watch it, have it on in the background while I'm cooking, just so that way I can say I gave it a shot. I gave it a chance. Because my
I'm still
coworker
in love with
actually,
you,
I'm still
Sean
in love with you.
Paul and Sasha.
Sasha, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this song though, I just found the name of it. Okay, I've watched the music video like 5 times. It is very cute, like the way that they do it. Because basically, what it is it's almost like she made, I don't know how many songs are on the album, let's say 10 songs, 10 music videos that could all flow into a movie. It has some really wild, like Fat Joe is in it. He's her therapist
Oh,
in
he
the
said
movie.
yes. He said
Yeah,
yes.
he did
Oh,
say yes.
okay.
Who else is in it? Jane Fonda's in it, Trevor Noah,
Jane
Neil
Fonda
deGrasse.
said
Yeah.
yes.
But okay, because I'm also watching the documentary though, and she's like, I don't know, like you kind of just need to like not she's telling her basically like you don't have to respond to everything that everybody's saying. Like you can be happy in your life and
Uh-huh.
just be happy in your life. Because I forgot they did Monster in Law together.
Ah, I love that movie.
It's yeah, it's very good. I haven't seen it in a while, but yeah.
I love that movie.
Um, who else is in it? Kiki Palmer's in it.
Oh, because okay, Hustlers. Yeah, got it. Okay.
Oh, she was in Hustlers, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was in Hustlers.
Post Malone's in it.
Post Malone. Okay,
I
Post Malone.
honestly though, I think Post Malone is just like, oh my God, Jennifer Lopez. Like,
I'll do
yeah.
it.
And did you ever watch Blackish or Grownish?
Yes,
The grandma.
I love her. She's so spunky.
Yo, she is in this too. Damn, I don't know the name of the song. But it's cute. Just I don't know. It's like pink and like wedding theme. It's basically like her 3 weddings in the yeah. In like Trevor Jackson from Grownish is in it.
Really?
Do you remember Aaron? That was who
Yeah.
he played there.
Okay.
She did get Derek Huff.
Okay.
And then oh, I learned from the documentary that Anthony Ramos was supposed to be in it, in the Heights.
Yeah, I know who that is.
But he called her and was like, I'm really good friends with Mark Anthony. I don't think I can do this. And she was like that's I parent my kids with him. Like, so it was interesting,
Huh?
right? That dude though, like he kind of gives me the ick a little bit. Do you remember when he like cheated on his wife and then like
He did. I saw that. And he was all
he
about
came
his
out with that
wife.
song. Okay, that's the thing. Is like these guys will be like wife guys, like that'll be their brand. Oh, we saw this with the whole Try Guy situation.
Oh,
Man,
yeah.
Amanda and I were engrossed in that.
Where was I? Was in Greece. I was in Greece following this.
And we didn't really talk about much else, but I would text her and be like, "Oh my God, did you see this?"
Yes. We were in Greece, and that was the one thing we made sure we were talking about, the Try Guys. That
Yeah. Maybe men just give me the ick in general. You know what? That's the theme for today. Men give me the ick. Men wrote this decision. Men do dumb things. Men give me the ick.
Oh,
Um, what about you? What have you had going on? Did you do anything fun?
We celebrated. Are we gonna do the glow of the week?
Yes, what is
Shall
making
we
you
do that?
glow?
Um, it was a good week this week. Um, whatchamacallit, we celebrated a friend's birthday. Welcome to the Dirty 30 Club. Because I'm convinced I'm still 30 because I didn't celebrate my birthday this year. So I'm 30. Um, whatchamacallit. So yeah, so we celebrated a friend's birthday, catching up with people. It was my cousin's baby shower also. Spent time with family. My grandmother came down, my mom came down. It was it was good. Vibes were good. I shouldn't say good. Vibes were great. So yeah,
Packed weekend.
that was a packed. Yeah, what is making you glow, Kristina?
So it has been a while since Amanda and I have seen each other. And pending any complications, we're supposed to hang out this weekend.
For real.
um, yeah, it's been God, I don't even how long has it been? Thomas's birthday.
Oh yeah. So not
But
that
like
long. I wouldn't say that
before
long.
like but
But
like
even like
we
just
didn't
like
even really get to talk that night
no,
because yeah.
everybody else in the mix.
Hmm. They're funny though. I like to watch them.
That is definitely it was a dinner and a show.
So yeah, report back. Not next week actually, because that's Lorday's episode, but the week after.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what's making me glow this week. Yeah, because the weather's gonna be pretty crappy this week actually, so that's not making me glow.
Supposed to drop again. Temperature is supposed to
And
drop fast.
cloudy. It's just so rude.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, you guys, if I wish I could remember the name of that JLo song, but you okay, go look it up. It's like it's a music video. It has Derek Q and Derek Huff. I do that every time. Trevor Jackson. It's like she's getting married. Oh, I need you to watch this video because I need your opinion on her dress that she wears at the beginning of the video because the people that I've seen it with like have not liked it. It's an interesting choice for a dress.
Okay, I want to see it now.
I don't know if I like it or dislike it.
I'll watch it.
Yeah. So I'm so sorry. I'm awful and can't think of the name of it. But so be sure to catch us back here next Wednesday here on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to rate us 5 stars on Spotify. Leave us a glowing review. Don't forget, we are still taking submissions for our season 3 finale. You can find the Google Forms link in our show notes. And if there is anything you want to hear before we end season 3, let us know.
Send it to us. With that, also follow us on Instagram at Glowing Up Latina, as Kristina had mentioned. Whatever you want us to talk about here on the podcast before the season ends, you can send that to us at glowinguplatina@gmail.com.
And until next week, keep glowing me, huh?
Bye.
Bye.